modern Horsens, Denmark. Year of our Lord 2024, home of the most Danish buildings God ever created, and honorary home of one of Denmark's greatest legends. But this is not the when that our story begins. The when is 1681, when the father of Denmark's greatest legend was born, some 600 years after the end of the Viking Age. A man out of time, a legend out of place. Horsens, city, eastern Jutland, Denmark. It lies at the head of Horsens Fjord, southwest of Rus. Historians claim it was founded in the 11th or 12th century-ish, but history doesn't really know. Vikings don't write shit down. But by the 12th century, Horsens was a fortified town with several monasteries, and those crackers write shit down all day. So I guess we just go with that date as if people didn't live here before, with all that Viking world domination thing going on 700 years earlier. We digress. The port received its first market charter in 1442, and in 1681 becomes the birthplace of Vitus Jonasson Bering, a Danish cartographer and explorer in Russian service, and an officer in the Russian Navy, and father of the legend of Daxi. Vitus Bering was known as a leader of 2 Russian expeditions, exploring the northeastern coast of the Asian continent, and from there, the western coast on the North American continent. The Bering Strait, the Bering Sea, Bering Island, the Bering Glacier, and Vitus Lake were all named in his honor. Tragedy struck in 1741, after the second expedition had discovered Alaska's Mount St. Elias on the 16th of July 1741. Ill with scurvy and exhaustion, Vitus Bering, driven to the brink of insanity, turned the ships and headed back towards port. A return journey that included the discovery of Kodiak Island. A storm separated the ships and a landing was made. Before anyone could stop him, Vitus stripped down naked and, according to all witnesses, ran stark mad into a roaming pack of ravenous hyena. But they did not rip him apart. As it turns out, hyena have a matriarchal society in which all female members rank higher than the males. And as it turns out, it just so happened that this alpha female took notice of something in special Vitus. Maybe it was his pure Viking madness and rage. Maybe it was fated. Regardless, she welcomed him. She allowed him to mount her, and they rode off into the wilds of the frozen Alaskan tundra. Vitus was to not be seen again for 4 months. During those months, the expedition soldiered on and made repairs and reprovisioned before it was set to embark once again. And on that day, upon the horizon, the emerging silhouette of one Vitus Bering, carrying a small bundle. At first, thought to be a hyena cub, it would soon be discovered that he held a child, an infant swaddled in animal hides, a child boy who would become known to the world as Daxi. As Vitus, his return heralded by his crew, attempted to board the newly refitted craft, a terrifying howling emerged from around them. She had returned for him. They attacked Vitus and snatched the infant child from him in an epic battle of life and death. But only Vitus would find death, succumb to his injuries on the 19th of December 1741. Vitus Bering died on the uninhabited island near the Kamchatka Peninsula, which was later given the name Bering Island. Daxi, on the other hand, his life had just begun. He would be raised by this hyena pack, taught in the ways of the Viking, in the cold, bitter tundra of the Alaskan wilderness, when he would grow a hatred of snow that would later shape his life. A child lost to time and to the world. Or was he? Years would pass. In Norse legend, to go berserk was to hamask, which translates as change form. Those who changed formed by entering berserkergang were considered hamrama, or shape-strong. In some cases, berserkers are described as undergoing drastic physical transformation, though this is no doubt in part hyperbole. Still, it's written, the hardest of men, with a touch of uncanny about a number of them. They were built and shaped more like trolls than human beings. We obviously don't need to get into the storied life of the legend of Daxi, for every child in the modern age is reared on tales and bedtime stories and knows of his mythic deeds. What child has not played Daxi and Indians growing up? But suffice it to say, when Daxi's hyena mother passed, he set out on a voyage to discover his father's homeland, ignorant of the ways of man's laws and ways of life. and what he discovered would awaken the slumbering warrior within and change the world forever. He landed in Russia, upon where he would travel west and bear witness the oppression of Stalin. From forced labor camps to the starvation of his own people, Daxi's rage grew within. The children Moscow still tell tales that he appeared at night, amidst blood-curdling howls, an image of beast and man. Despite the government cover-up that would follow, it was Daxi and Daxi alone who fought his way through Moscow and end Stalin's horrible regime. This is when he discovered the horror to the south of the even more atrocious reign of China's Mao Zedong, the starvation of billions. And there too, single-handedly, he would ravage his way through the Great Wall, through thousands of Mao's troops. None of them could stop him. Millions turned up to make sure it was true. His death is celebrated to this day. Daxi resumed his trek home. Finally arriving at the fjord of Horsens, he came across a young woman he would come to know as Nanix. They would fall in love. But the bitter cold of Denmark was too much for him to sustain. Together, they would travel south and disappear. Legend holds that they sought out warmer climates and settled in the deserts of Egypt. Somewhere, it is believed they sequestered themselves in a small apartment hidden away in a secret location. Others swear it is in the ass of the Sphinx itself, but no one dare enter to find out. It is thought they harvest spiders, so many damn spiders, as to be the sole source of silk in the world today. But they trust that if times call for it, and when people are suffering the most, that the warrior hyena Daxi will reawaken and free them once again. When asked by a reporter in 1949 why he would fight, solo and alone, the evil forces of Stalin and later Mao, he responded with a triumphant and proud meh. Today, the proud slogan of a city steeped in Viking history, Horsens, Med, Denmark, adopted Daxia as their son, his forever hometown. There, in his honorary birthplace, several statues remain in the heart of Horsens that secretly retain the legend of Daxia and Nanix, the mother of spiders. A statue of the hyena who stole off with baby Daxi and raised him in the wilds to train him in the ways of the Viking. And, of course, this one, proclaimed to be a more accurate depiction, an impressionist's rendition from a survivor who swears to have encountered Daxi one day in Ark. Horsens also honors his eternal beloved Nanix as well. She is beautifully rendered here in bronze, in what is believed to be the moment when Daxi first set eyes on her and fell in love, on the shore of the Horsens fjord, performing taxidermy on the unalived skeletal remains of her latest victim. Many argue that Daxi and his origin is a legend and myth only, and point to the lack of any evidence that hyenas have ever once existed in frozen-ass Alaska. However, as recently as 2006, a cursory glance at the Wikipedia page on hyena, one can see that a more recent molecular analysis agrees on the phylogenetic relationship between the 5 extant Hyenidae species. And sure enough, a line of hyena Daxi. When modern artificial intelligence is tasked with rendering an image of Daxi the legend, even it offers this chilling image. So what exactly is a Daxi? A man, a myth, a legend waiting for the world to catch up. Maybe he is that lingering hope within us all, that when pushed to extremes, we ourselves have the animal rage to see us through the worst of times. We may still not know where exactly in the world Daxi can be found today, but there is one mystery we have answered, that if you wish to catch a fleeting glimpse, and if it's Tuesday, look to the horizon at 7, because it means one thing, and one thing for sure. It's fucking game night.
It's Fukin game night. See you next time.
Roswell, New Mexico, a small backwater town in the middle of a small backwater state, consisting largely of farms and farms. Oh, sure, ranches. New Mexico is also home to the White Sands National Park and the infamous White Sands Missile Range, where the world's first atomic bomb was tested, so they have that going for them. But this isn't the where that our story begins. The where is Omicron Persei 8, located in the constellation Lyra, some 32.5 light-years away, a cold white dwarf star in the Omicron Persei star system. And we know what you're thinking. You're thinking cold is a subjective reference relative to other balls of nuclear fission floating in free space, where the largest of them reach 25,000 Kelvin. That's about 44,540 degrees Fahrenheit, or 24,726 Celsius. Yeah, but no, we actually mean cold. The researchers used NASA's Hubble Space Telescope to analyze its pattern of light. They found Omicron Persei 8, also known as 1826 plus 2650, no hotter than a negative 40 degrees Fahrenheit. That's also negative 40 degrees Celsius. In 1915, his home planet, tired of being cold, began sending out fleets of explorers in hopes of finding a warmer climate to call home. Now, we are not talking about massive in scale, some galactic dominating stellar armada with planet-sized vessels here. No. We are speaking of massive in scope. Hundreds of thousands of tiny little ships, about the size of a two-seater Honda, for a journey, in Netero's case, which would last 32.5 years. But I digress. On July 4th in the Lord's year of 1947, Netero reached the promised land of Roswell, New Mexico, a small town of mostly farmland, and by all accounts already conveniently adorned with so many UFO themes that he was already feeling at home. At first, and why wouldn't he believed that cats were the dominant life form on the planet. He may still be correct. Nevertheless, upon abducting one for first contact, tragedy unfolded. Though most of us mere earthlings understand what to put a cat in a car means, poor Netero could never have been prepared. Netero's vessel smashed into the farm of Mac Brazel. The ranch of Mac Brazel, and would soon become mired in conspiracy and cover-up. The U.S. Air Force would ultimately respond to the site, refute original reports of an alien saucer crash, and call it a high-tech Project Mogul weather balloon, while witnesses claim the military removed all the debris and absconded with the body of a dead alien pilot into the now legendary Hangar 18, where his ship was to be reverse-engineered, and Netero was to be autopsied. In recent years, a video has surfaced claiming to be footage of the autopsy. In truth, Netero didn't die in the crash at all. He was taken into custody. Evaluating his situation, he recognized that the world of these ape creatures was not of sufficient technological development to repair his ship, that he wasn't going anywhere soon, and the temperatures on Earth were stifling for his cold-blooded body. And so he reverted his physical form, metamorphosizing, first into a ball of black ooze, and from that black ooze, he would be reborn, guided by DNA samples from his captors themselves, into what would appear to be a baby human boy. But this was no normal human boy. A team of scientists were gathered to look after his upbringing, to raise him as a normal boy. A surrogate family was selected for him, complete with 3 older brothers, and while waiting for the Earth to develop, Netero himself would be given a chance to grow up. He would grow up fast, always under the watchful eye of the government. Within 2 years, he had taken up the appearance of a 10-year-old. He had seemed to have retained all his knowledge in science and mathematics, and the government was eager to press it to their advantage. By 1953, he was meeting regularly with Einstein to proof-check his work and attending MIT, and by 1955, he was back in Roswell, developing state-of-the-art rocket technology with Robert Goddard, father of modern American rocket science. Did you think it was a coincidence that Robert Goddard made Roswell, New Mexico his home? But the tech that Nitero searched for was well outside of his grasp, and although he believed that man possessed the ability, he knew this world was not at all focused. He needed to marshal the world around him. In 1959, Nitero met with and successfully petitioned Senator John Kennedy to, in his persuasive words, go to the moon and, do other hard things.
We choose to go to the moon in this decade and do the other things, not because they are easy, but because they are hard.
A year later, Kennedy would be elected the 35th President of the United States. Under the cloak of darkness, Nitero began laying the groundwork for what would become NASA and America's march to the moon. Here we see a candid photo of Nitero developing the IBM 726, an instrumental advancement for computers used in the Mercury and Apollo space programs. Though NASA succeeded in their mission, Nitero still found the state of tech woefully far below his advanced needs. He would disappear into California, take up residence in a garage, and continue developing things on his own. His tinkering caught the attention of some curious and promising neighborhood kids, one Stevie Jobs and his troubled pal Billy Gates. Together, the three of them would push the boundaries of computer science into the consumer age. They called Nitero the Woz. With the massive noise around the meteoric rise of Apple computers and Microsoft, the US government lost track of Nitero's whereabouts. Some suspect that Gates and Jobs helped him disappear. Some suspect that he is, not coincidentally, in New Mexico, working for Elon at SpaceX, still working to get home. Yet, still, others hold out hope that he finally found what he was looking for and escaped the bounds of this earthly plane. We may not know where exactly in the world Nitero can be found today, but there is one thing that we know for sure, that if you wish to catch a fleeting glimpse, and if it's Tuesday, look toward the horizon at 7, because it means one thing, and one thing for sure. It's fucking game night.
It's Fukin game night. See you next time.
San Diego, California, a coastal city nestled in the southwest corner of the United States, historically almost discovered by Daxi's father Vitas bearing for the Russians, had he not gone mad in Alaska. Instead, it was to be discovered by Juan Cabrillo and claimed for Spain. In 1821, San Diego became part of the newly declared Mexican Empire until California was conquered by the United States in 1848, following the Mexican-American War, and was admitted to the Union as a state in 1850. San Diego would grow to become America's finest city, home of the famous San Diego Zoo, Balboa Park, SeaWorld, the Hotel del Coronado, home and training center of the U.S. Marine Corps, and of the Navy SEALs, of the best tacos and margaritas the world over, and the birthplace of 8-Bit Boss. But you won't find any statues or memorials of 8-Bit here, because this is not a where our story begins story. This is a how, and the how is with an Atari 2600. Born in 1971, 8-Bit grew up an only child. Soon after his birth, he would lose his mother in a tragic kitchen accident when she would choke while sampling one of her infamously dry chocolate chip cookies. His father, Mr. Boss, would be left to raise him alone. However, Levi Boss was far too preoccupied with his work, leaving poor 8-Bit buried in his Atari 2600 for most of his impressionable childhood, longing for attention and for his mother, lost to him so long ago. As he and the world around him grew, he would discover a love of all things gaming. The Commodore 64 home computer, the Nintendo Entertainment System, the N64, early PCs, and then of course the internet. His longing for attention would serve him well, as we all know, and combined with his passion for gaming, he would develop the worldwide phenomenon known to all of us as Game Night. An empire that would span movies and theme parks, a line of soft drinks and merchandise, and at its core, a nightly online streaming adventure that would unite the entire globe and bring, for the first time in recorded history, a real and lasting world peace. Fan mail poured in, among them, a special package that contained an Atari 2600. But this was no ordinary Atari 2600. The message attached claimed it was a time machine. Fitted with its original paddles, a rotation to the right would send him forward in time. A rotation to the left, back in time. He thought on it and developed a clever idea. He would return to 1965, give his young mother a decent cookie recipe that he found on the dark web, and save her life. He strapped it on, and with a twist of his wrist, he vanished. Born in 1980, 8-Bit grew up with one older brother, as seen here in this eerie photograph taken on his 5th birthday, but his older brother grew up to develop special needs. It is said that his mother had been unknowingly serving him cookies, laced with PCP, from an old recipe she had been given by a stranger in the 1960s. This left Mrs. Boss far too exhausted and preoccupied, taking care of the elder son's needs, to ever consider having any more children, and far too busy to show 8-Bit much attention. Instead, he escaped into video games. His first love was the Atari 2600 and the game, Adventure, which he would occasionally play with his brother. This developed into a passion. With his best mate Daxi, whom it would be discovered grew up without his father, they would come together and develop a rather successful streaming platform followed by millions of devoted fans, known as Game Night. As their popularity rose, so did the volume of fan mail. Among that mail, a special package arrived that contained an Atari 2600. But this was no ordinary Atari 2600. The message attached claimed it was a time machine. He thought long and hard on it, and developed a clever idea. He decided he would return to 1965 and give his young mother a decent cookie recipe in hopes to save his brother's life. And then he would go even further back in time, to 1740, and meet Vitus Bering, supplying him some citrus fruit so he would not go mad with scurvy, hoping that Daxi could grow up with his father. 8-Bit strapped on the time machine, and with a twist of his wrist, he vanished. 1974, Port Stalin, California, western port of the glorious motherland of the Soviet Union. Born third and final sanctioned child of the Boss family, 8-Bit would rise within the party to become a promising servant of the KGB propaganda arm, teamed up with his comrade Daxi Bering from Horsens, Russia, son of famous Russian explorer of the entire west coast of North America, Vitus Bering. Together they developed Game Night, which became the most popular show in the Soviet world over, because we forced you to watch it. Slowly we learned of 8-bit's hidden and dastardly desires for independence and freedom, and of the brutal claims young Daxi reported he suffered as a child at the hands of his heroic father. As our hearts broke, their infamy rose, and so did the volume of hate mail. However, among that hate mail, a special package that contained an Atari 2600. But this was no ordinary Atari 2600. The message attached claimed it was a time machine. He thought on it and developed a ludicrous idea. Without permission from the state, the fugitive 8-bit sought to travel back and sabotage the voyage of Vitus Bering. By releasing a pack of ravenous hyena onto Kodiak Island and prevent the spread of the motherland across the globe. 8-bit strapped on the time machine, and with a twist of his wrist, he vanished. 1984. San Diego, California, Mexico. Discovered by Spanish explorer Juan Cabrillo, by 1821, San Diego became part of the newly declared Mexican Empire. Secured against the rising threat of the Imperial United States, with financial support of the Asian Empire of China, California would remain cemented forever within the Mexican Empire and become birthplace of Senior Ocho-bit, Jefe, in 1984. Ocho was the last brother of a large, healthy Catholic Latino familia, and often speaks of feeling lost and ignored. In the daily turmoil of the large familia's activity, Ocho found escape in his Atari 2600, where he developed a passion for video games and tacos. This passion would serve Ocho well. His sweatlord savagery in video games would get him noticed on an international level. Raging sweatlord Ocho met and perfectly paired with his sad and passive Chinese partner Daxi, who as a child had lost his father to a terrible wilderness excursion in the Kodiak Islands, involving a ravenous pack of hyena. The two of them, sad little Daxi and savage Ocho-bit Jefe, would build the international video game streaming giant we all have come to know as Game Night. Fan mail poured in. Among them, a special package that contained an Atari 2600, but this was no ordinary Atari 2600. The message attached claimed that it was a time machine. He thought on it and developed a simple idea. He would travel back in time so as to help his sad friend. He would find and dope up this pack of hyena with XTC so as to pacify them and save Vitus Bering's life, so that Daxi could know a life with his padre. He strapped on the machine, and with a twist of his wrist, he vanished. 1974. San Diego, California. America's finest city and birthplace of 8-bit boss. Raised in a happy family of 4 brothers, a loving mother, and a hard-working father who afforded his children all the newest toys of the 1980s. Among them, an Atari 2600. 8-bit found a passion for video games. The Boss family strongly believed in a good education and a well-rounded life of sports and activity, too much for 8-bit's taste, to be honest, for he longed to just play games, and such things tore him away. He would, however, attend college, train in the production of movies and television, and travel the world making motion pictures. This opportunity exposed him to people who amassed fame, and he worked with the poorest of the poor, as well as the world's wealthiest people. What he discovered was that under all that facade, such high pursuits, even when attained, were ultimately unfulfilling. No amount of success could buy you more time. A common denominator run through them all, which was that happiness was simple, for everyone. Love and friends, and play while you still could. Live without fear, and let your heart guide your actions. He left the industry and returned to California. He would hire an inexperienced PR team, launch a small and otherwise not noteworthy gathering of dear friends that he would call Game Night. Together with his younger brother Netero and his mates Daxi, Warhawk, Miles, as well as the occasional guest appearances of a cast of wild characters, 8-bit finally felt fulfilled. Once asked, did it matter that Game Night was not some smashing worldwide phenomenon? No. We don't have to deal with all that troublesome fan mail. It's better this way. Happiness was not bought with materialism or by the recognition of strangers after all. Happiness is breaking out of the mundane weekly grind and spending a few hours with the ones you love. We may not know exactly when in the world 8-bit can be found today, but there is one mystery we have answered. That if you wish to catch a fleeting glimpse, and it's a Tuesday, look to the horizon at 7, because it means one thing, and one thing for sure, it's fucking game night.
It's Fukin game night.